Hello, and thank you for joining us for this calfordseaden CPD seminar. This is a recording of a live event that was held in January 2021, and it covers the building safety case. The team members giving the presentation are Charles Hingston, Partner Building Surveyor, Jenna Andrews, Associate Mechanical Engineer, Bob Terry, Head of Structural Engineering, and Varun Soni, Associate BIM Manager. Varun also chairs BIM for HA and sits on the executive team for the BIM Alliance, both of which advise the MHCLG on the golden thread. I will now hand you over to Charles.
My name is Charles Hingston and I'm a Partner Building Surveyor at calfordseaden, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Jenna Andrews, Associate Mechanical Engineer, Bob Terry, Partner Structural Engineer, and Varun Soni, Associate BIM Manager. Varun also chairs BIM for HA and sits on the executive team for the UK BIM Alliance, both of which advise the MHCLG on the golden thread. Our presentation today will follow the format of an introduction to the building safety cases by myself. Jenna and Bob will discuss the surveys that we can offer, and Varun will explain the golden thread, and we'll end, as Sarah's just said, with your questions. The building safety case has arrived via the Building Safety Bill, which has been established from the findings of the report by Dame Judith Hackett called The Building a Safer Future. We anticipate that the bill will come into effect from July 2021, and essentially the bill combines existing standards and regulations, enhances their requirement and regulation, and strengthens the regulatory system of building safety. Enforcement will be overseen by the new building safety regulator, who will have enforcement powers for non-compliance using a combination of new and existing powers, including issuing compliance notices, appointing a special measures manager, and as a last resort, prosecution via the Building Act. Building control will undergo reform through improved competence. There will be a register of approved inspectors, and all work to high-risk buildings will need to be approved by local building control and not an approved inspector. There will also be a list of new duty holders, which will include all those participating in new build and refurbishment projects and are defined as designers, contractors, and building owners. The building safety case encompasses and is effectively the golden thread. It will only relate to high-risk buildings, which are defined in the bill as buildings where the top floor surface is more than 18 metres above ground level, excluding plant rooms, and or buildings with more than 6 floors above ground level, excluding basements. The key points of the building safety case are that it is a digital record of fire and structural safety. There is a requirement to continually maintain and update the information, and the purpose is to provide the person responsible for the building with the information required to manage building safety throughout the life cycle of the building. In new buildings, there is a requirement to manage building safety risks at all stages of design and construction in the form of gateways, and Bob and Varun will discuss these in more detail later in the presentation. For buildings in occupation, there is a requirement for an accountable person to be put in place. There may be more than one accountable person, and these can include an individual, a partnership, or a corporate body. They will be responsible for registering the building and applying for the building assurance certificate. Finally, the accountable person will be required to appoint a building safety manager, who can be an individual or organisation, and their principal role is to assist the accountable person in the day-to-day management of fire safety in accordance with the safety case report. The safety case report is the document issued to the building safety regulator to apply for the building assurance certificate, and makes the claim and argument for residential safety and answer the question, can you identify the building safety risks in your building and show me how you manage these on an ongoing basis as far as you can so that it is safe. So how can we help? Well, we are currently working with various providers and within calfordseaden to prepare safety case reports, and we are gathering the information and are familiar with the process. However, as the building safety regulator has not yet been put in place, we are reviewing the guidance and preparing the safety case reports, and we are continually developing and updating the processes and are confident that they are robust. To demonstrate this, we are taking the lead by issuing clients with an information tracker, which is a comprehensive but not necessarily complete list of documents and information required. The list is continually updated and revised, and additional information included to ensure that it is tailored to your property. The information is reviewed for completeness, and this is backed up by our surveys, which will firstly be discussed by Jenna. So I'll now pass you over to Jenna, who will provide further detail on the building services surveys.
Thank you, Charles. Hello, everyone. I am Jenna Andrews, Associate Mechanical Engineer at calfordseaden. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to talk to you about the mechanical and electrical life safety systems in relation to the building safety case, specifically for existing buildings. Charles has explained the background of the building safety case, the building safety bill, and the essential need for the golden thread of information. So what does that mean for your existing property portfolio in terms of the existing mechanical and electrical assets? For each of your high-risk properties, you need to ask yourself, can you identify the building safety risks in your building and show me how you manage these on an ongoing basis as far as you can, so that it is safe? This is stated in the explanatory notes relating to the Building Safety Bill. The safety case report submitted to the Building Safety Regulator will clearly demonstrate your answer to this question. So how will this be achieved? You will need to collate your property list and identify the high-risk properties within your portfolio. Obtain fire risk assessments, review the existing installed life safety equipment, check compliance with current regulations, standard and industry guidance, compile servicing, repair and inspection records, carry out a condition survey and plan for life cycle replacements. I'm going to talk to you now about the M&E systems which are considered life safety and what is expected to be included in the safety case report. So servicing of your electrical installations within your building. This will be in line with BS 7671 and the RET regulations. Compliance will be demonstrated by a satisfactory electrical installation report. The report must be signed off by a competent and qualified person and cover 100% of your system. Next slide, please. Testing of your emergency lighting, both annually and 6 monthly, in line with BS 5266. Compliance will be demonstrated by compliance certificates in the correct format. Monthly checks should also be carried out by a trained in-house staff to ensure that all light failures are picked up quickly. All of this needs to be documented and saved in a central location. Next slide, please. Maintenance of your fire alarm systems. Compliance must be carried out by a qualified and competent person in line with British standards. Quarterly inspections should cover 100% of the system. An official compliance certificate should be issued to the client. Weekly tests should be carried out by in-house staff. All of these visits should be documented and stored in a central location. Automatic opening vents. Servicing should be carried out every 6 months by a qualified and competent person to meet BS 7346. You should also carry out weekly tests by in-house staff. Next slide, please. Compliance of dry and wet risers to BS 9990. Servicing will consist of 6 monthly visual inspections and an annual pressure test. Next slide, please. Sprinkler systems. Weekly tests should be carried out by in-house staff, and an annual service must be carried out to meet British standards. Next slide, please. Lifts. You will need to identify what type of lifts you have in your properties: a passenger lift, an evacuation lift, or a firefighting lift. Maintenance should be carried out in line with British standards. The frequency of your service visits will depend on the type of lifts you have, the number of floors served, the level and type of use it is subjected to. Lola requires a lift to have a thorough examination by a competent person twice a year for passenger lifts. All priority lifts should be maintained and examined to ensure their technical features and controls remain in good working order, in line with Statutory Fire Reform 2005. Next slide, please. All ducted ventilation systems and fire dampers should be serviced regularly, in line with BS 9999. Next slide, please. And an 11-month service should be carried out on lightning protection by a qualified and competent person to meet British standards. Okay, next slide, please. So to summarise, for each of your high-risk properties in your portfolio, you will need to identify all mechanical and electrical life safety assets in each property. You will need to identify all areas of non-compliance and carry out necessary remedial works. Identify life expectancy of your assets to ensure you have budget available for capital replacement to avoid system failures. This will be an ongoing process that will need to be maintained and documented at every stage to ensure the golden thread of information is continuous throughout the whole life cycle of your property. Potential non-compliance issues should be identified early and also areas for further investigation. Next slide, please. So what is the aim? Varun will talk to you further today about collating all of your property information in a COBie spreadsheet so it can be included in the overall building model. An efficient way to collate your information required for the building safety case could be within your housing management software, as it is a central location that can be easily accessed when required. We are in discussions with several housing software providers on how they incorporate COBie data. Next slide, please. We have discussed all of the mechanical and electrical items in your properties relating to life safety. However, there are other critical mechanical and electrical items that should be considered and addressed at the same time as examining the life safety assets. These include gas heating and hot water plant, landlord lighting, water hygiene, door entry systems. At calfordseaden, we can assist you with all of the elements I have discussed today, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll now pass you over to my colleague, Bob Terry.
Thanks, Jenna, and hello everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Bob Terry, Head of the Civil and Structural Engineering at calfordseaden, and I'm here to provide some advice on the implications of the Building Safety Bill from a structural perspective. Right. From a structural perspective, the main implication is that at planning, or Gateway 1, there will be the need for all applicable buildings to have fire tender tracking included as part of the planning submission. Before construction commences, which is Gateway 2, there is now a requirement for a full plan submission to the new Building Safety Regulator. The current requirements for full plan submission include for the provision of structural calculations. So the inference here is that they should be submitted to and improved by building control before any works commence on site. There is guidance from the government on the building safety case currently, which notes that the submission may be phased, foundations, substructure, superstructure, for example, and it is to include drawings and specifications, but it's not 100% clear if calculations are to be submitted and approved at the same time. If calculations are required to be submitted and approved before work start on site, there is potential that the time frame from planning submission to works commencing on site may need to be extended to allow their production. There may also be implications as to who is in control of the site when the submission is made, the client or the contractor. If the latter, then there will either need to be the need for the contractor to be involved in the production of the construction information sooner, or there will be a longer lead-in from the appointment of the contractor to the work starting on site. Next slide, please, Charles. For existing buildings, the exact requirements of the building safety report are even more unclear. It is known that a structural inspection report will need to be produced, with subsequent investigations and reports produced on a regular basis. Again, it's unclear as to the periods for such inspections. This report will need to confirm the structural form of the building and highlight any notable defects. If no record information is available on the structure, then there will likely be the need for intrusive investigations to confirm structural form and makeup. It is not clear if evidential proof will be needed for the structural design of any existing applicable buildings either. If it is the case and no record information is available, it may be that detailed structural calculations will need to be produced or some form of load testing carried out to confirm adequacy. Next slide, please, Charles. In summary, the structural information needed for the proposed buildings is no different, except the release of the design calculations may be needed before construction starts. For existing buildings, a structural report will need to be provided, confirming the form, use, notable defects and lateral stability resistance. On top of that, there is potential that there may be the need to include structural drawings, especially if there's no record information or the structural form is complicated, calculations to confirm how the lateral stability, that is resistance to wind load and sway, is provided, calculations and or load testing to confirm the capacity of the floors, and design checks on any key elements, that is parts of the structure whereby their collapse would affect disproportionate areas of the building as a whole. It is expected that the final document for the Building Safety Charter will provide further clarity on exactly what information is needed for submission to the Building Safety Regulator. All information collated, whether for new or existing buildings, needs to be kept in a digital format, which is managed, monitored and maintained throughout the life of the structure, part of the golden thread. In respect to the information which may be needed, calfordseaden have the ability to provide specifications for any investigations and follow-up and reports following such to help compile the necessary information for the Building Safety Report. Next slide, please, Charles. I'll now hand you over to Varun, Soni, our BIM manager, for him to expand upon the gateways and the golden thread, as well as other BIM related topics. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Bob. Hi everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Varun and I head up BIM at calfordseaden. I also chair the BIM for Housing Association working groups and I am the advisory chair of BIM for Housing. I sit on the executive team for the UK BIM Alliance, who has a lot of work with the MHCLG at the moment. I also sit on the board for the MHCLG's Golden Thread Initiative and the Housing Asset Data Group, again, which is a project that works with the MHCLG. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk you through some of the requirements that we're looking at on the Golden Thread and how that works with the gateways. Next slide, please. After the tragedy at Grenfell, the Hackett report was commissioned, and some of the key findings that were found was that the current system of building regs and fire safety wasn't really fit for purpose. There was inherent need for a change in culture to support the delivery of buildings that are safe, not just for the future, but also for now. And also that there needs to be clearer rights and obligations for residents to maintain fire safety. One of the core being that they need to work in partnership with the duty holder of an asset. The other area that was really focused on within the Hackett report was the term the golden thread. This term was the need for accurate data, digital data to be specific, throughout the life cycle of the asset. Next slide, please. From the Hackett report came the Building Safety Bill. I'm sure many of you have read it, and one of the areas that I looked at was the proposal of gateways in order to produce better quality information which is more consistent throughout the life cycle of the asset. At each gateway, they had specific duty holders which were in charge of creating and producing the correct information at said gateway. The first gateway that takes place at planning, the duty holders would have been the client, the lead designer and principal designer. The aim of this gateway is that a planning application will be able to demonstrate any fire safety requirements, and they need to be shown to consider a fire strategy within their proposals. At this gateway, you will find that the building safety regulator will also have a specialist fire safety input. They'll be working quite closely with local planning authorities in order to go through the approval processes. At gateway 2, we'll find that that takes place just before construction begins, and the principal designer and principal contractor will be the duty holders. At this gateway, before a package or a phase of works begins, we need to have a full set of plans, including the detailed specification in relation to how structural safety and fire safety risks will be managed and mitigated. There also needs to be a 3D digital model of building information, which is meant to be as planned, and it should have the construction products that are going to be used. There also needs to be an update on the fire strategy that was presented at planning, and also a fire statement. What this will do is this will address the fire service access and water availability, and you will also need to have a construction control plan, which will set out how compliance within will be achieved for the building regs, how you will also manage change controls, and how all these change controls will be recorded. It's also worth noting that any major changes that take place at this time will need to go back and be agreed not only by the client and the principal designer, but also by the regulator itself. At gateway 3, this will take place at handover, and the duty holders will be the principal contractor, the client, and any client appointed accountable people, such as the asset manager or the building safety manager. The aim of this gateway is to make sure that the building safety certificate can be achieved. So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to have a handover of all building safety information as an as-built building. There also needs to be a safety case of the building, identifying all the hazards, describing how risks are going to be controlled, and detailing all the safety information and management systems that are going to be included, including the emergency response procedures that will take place. There also needs to be a resident engagement strategy, setting out how information will be provided to residents, also how residents will be able to use complaints procedures, and any wider residents engagement programs that you would have in place. There also needs to be a full set of COBie data, as well as an as-built asset information model and 2D digital drawings. What's important is that this information doesn't get lost. The whole point of this golden thread is so that it will continue on into the operation phase. And what we find is the safety case will be reviewed and audited every 5 years, along with your safety license for the occupation of that building. If you don't keep your information up to date, you will fail. It's that simple. And the only other time where you will be audited is if the building undergoes any major refurbishments. What's also important to realise as well is for existing buildings which fall within the scope of this new bill, the content of that golden thread will need to be recreated retrospectively, and this is something that we've been doing quite a lot of lately. What we will need to do is all the information required at gateway 3 will need to be reproduced so that it will pass the safety case. What's also important to note is that access to information is going to be critical for residents. The government has put a big onus at the moment on residents being at the heart of the new building safety system. So what's going to be really important is that the accountable person or the duty holder in charge of that asset will have a requirement that they have to proactively provide residents with information on the safety of their building. This could be through a new tenant handbook every year, every 6 months, or it could also be that residents will request information on maintenance records, etc., for where they live, and they have to be provided. If these are not provided, the resident now has a right to go to the regulator and complain, and that complaint can leave you with issues when you come to doing your audit, which could lead to a license being revoked. Next slide, please. So one of the big BS British standards coming out of the golden thread is going to be BS 8644, and BS 8644 really is just about the digital management of fire information. The core of this is that it's going to be looking at utilising an already existing framework, which is going to be the UK BIM framework, to manage fire safety information throughout all stages and life cycle of a building. And it aligns very closely with the ISO 19650 standard series, which is an international series looking at the information management. These are the current BIM tools that we use within the industry already, so that's why they're aligning to this. The BS 8644 and the Building Safety Bill will go hand in hand, and they both inform each other. Next slide, please. So in order to achieve the information for ISO 19650, there are certain core documents and certain software that we do recommend that you look at within the organisation. First one being that you need to have some organisation information requirements. This will set out your BIM strategy within your organisation, your information management strategy, and basically showcase why you're doing BIM. The next part is your asset information requirements. This will define exactly what will be required within your asset team, your building safety team, and it will help develop the exchange information requirements. The exchange information requirements basically are handed out by an employer to the design and construction team to say, this is what we require, when we require it, this is the information exchanges we need, and showcases all the information we require for the ISO 19650 standards. Along with that, you will have COBie data. COBie stands for Construction Operation Building Information Exchange, and I will talk about it in the next slide. But basically, this is an international standard that breaks down all the components, the types of information, all attributed information and documentation that will be required. And the next part to look at is the common data environment. In order to maintain something called a single source of truth in that golden thread, it's important that common data environment is brought early on into the client's project, and not just when a contractor comes on board. It's so that you will have up-to-date information throughout the project, which is it's imperative for any project trying to realise the golden thread. Next slide, please. So as I was saying, COBie is an international standard, and it stands for Construction Operation Building Information Exchange. A lot easier just to say COBie. I don't think anybody wants to remember all them words, but what the whole point behind COBie is, it's not about asking for more information. It's asking for structured information of the information we already ask for. It's about being able to present it and reuse it within the asset systems a lot easier. As Jenna led on before, we are working with a lot of the asset management software providers in order to make sure they are able to take on COBie, so that it should be a seamless transition from development and construction to the asset management and operation of an asset. This is all about improving how information is handed over in a digitalized format. And although it is a very multicolored spreadsheet, the colors do actually have a representation of information, either showing what information is required and when, or being able to give the client an opportunity to say, we would like to capture further information on certain attributes for certain elements of data. And it also allows you to have required fields that link in data. What we mean by that is you can put in all your documentation from test certifications, product photos, and technical information and O&M manuals within this spreadsheet. Again, it creates that single source of truth. Next slide, please. That was just a little overview by all of us. So we hope you found that useful. If you do have any questions, please just put your hands up now and we'll be happy to take them. Next slide, Charles.